Hey YouTube, and welcome back to Beanie Games. Today we'll be continuing with our set of videos on solving the Sudoku Puzzle Hunt. Once again, I'd like to thank Mark and Simon from Cracking the Cryptic for hosting the Puzzle Hunt, as well as a special thank you to Neil Talbot for helping me edit it. Now, for those of you who haven't yet tried the Puzzle Hunt, I strongly recommend you do so, and a link to Cracking the Cryptic's Patreon page can be found in the description below. Now let's get on to the puzzle. Last time on the channel we were able to solve Lascivious Queens, and we have saved the solution grid here. And once again, the next thing that we need to do in the puzzle hunt is to work out which puzzle we are meant to solve next. Now, for those of you who have already discovered the theme of the puzzle hunt and have worked out which puzzle is next, feel free to skip ahead to the solution of the video. Once again, a timestamp should be available in the description below. Now, I should say that finding the theme and discovering the order of the grids was the intended solution path for this puzzle hunt, and we will hopefully cover this in either a future solution video or in a later video regarding the creation process for this puzzle hunt. But once again, we're going to go through the brute force approach to finding the next puzzle. And I think this is what makes the puzzle hunt much more accessible to a range of solvers, because it doesn't require you to have made that link to the theme. Okay, so once again I've added the circles to our solution grid, and now hopefully we can go through and work out which one is next. So once again we can start with a raging temperature. So normal Sudoku rules apply. In addition, each thermometer must strictly increase along its length from the bulb. Well, from the digits in our circles here, we can see that only one of them matches up with one of the thermometers in the grid, and it's going to be this one down here, and that's on the bulb. So there's no obvious contradiction that we can see from just placing the digits into the grid, so we might come back to a raging temperature later and see if this is the next puzzle for us to solve. Now once again, we're going to see a contradiction in forged letters with this A clue right here. So we discussed this in the previous video on Lascivious Queens, that this A can't be a 9. Which is what this circle clue would make it be. So we can see that forged letters once again is not going to be the next puzzle for us to solve in the puzzle hunt. So moving on to hostile killer, we can see here that this 1 clue is going to cause us quite a bit of trouble, as well as this 3 clue. You could use either of those, but they're going to be placed in these 21 cages, either here or here. This 1 clue is a bit more obvious, so if we were to place a 1 here, we would then need these 2 digits to add to 20, which is impossible in regular Sudoku. So hostile killer is not going to be the next puzzle for us to solve. Okay, hungry for sandwiches. Normal Sudoku rules apply. The clues on the outside of the grid define the sum of the digits sandwiched between either the 1 and the 9 or the 3 and the 8 in a given row or column. And so for us to see an obvious contradiction, we're probably going to want to look to see if any of the sandwiches, if we are given any of the crusts of the sandwiches in our givens, and whether we can see any obvious contradictions. So we can see we're given a 3 and an 8 in the same column here in number 2, which is going to be placed here and here. But those don't appear to break either the 3 or the 13 clue. And while we're given a 9 over here and a couple of 1s, once again, there's no obvious contradiction. So we might come back to hungry for sandwiches a bit later as well. So moving on to hypocrisy, we can once again see that this can't be the next puzzle for us to solve. And that's because we just aren't given enough digits from the circle clues to be able to solve a normal Sudoku grid. We are going to need 17 cells to 17 givens to solve a Sudoku grid as a minimum, and we're only given 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 Sudoku givens from these circle cells. So once again, hypocrisy is not going to be possible to be solved. Now we've already solved It's Up in the Air, and we've already solved Lascivious Queens, so we can move on to Over Greedy. And we can see that this 3 clue, once again, is going to be causing a bit of trouble. So this 3 clue would be passed down to this red square here, which is going to cause a clash in both this row and this box. So over greedy can also be excluded. Okay, and the last one for us to check is schismatic nonominos. And we can see this 6th clue up the top here in this circle is would be passed down to this cell in the pink shape, which is going to clash with this 6 in this column as well as in the pink shape. So schismatic nonominos is also not the puzzle that we're meant to solve next. Okay, so we're left with hungry for sandwiches and a raging temperature, and we're going to require a bit more work to work out if there's another contradiction for us to help us narrow this down further. And so I'm going to just open a raging temperature quickly and quickly go through some of the beginning logic to this puzzle to show why a raging temperature is not the next puzzle for us to solve in order. Okay, and what it's going to come down to is this thermometer over here. Now, we can see, so obviously this is a thermometer which has to increase along its length, starting from the bulb. So you can put the minimum values in for each of those, and the maximum values we can also do just in reverse, and we can fill in all the digits in between. So I suppose this is one way to go about working out what options are available in each cell along a thermometer, or you can also look at the degrees of freedom and work out how many possibilities are available in each cell. Now this cell here is quite restricted because we are given a 7 and an 8 in this row, which is going to force a 6 to be in this cell here. That's going to then subsequently lead to a restriction along the rest of the thermometer below it. And here we can see we're going to develop our contradiction. So from the circled clues, we should be given that this 3 should be passing down to this cell here. And that's going to cause that clash, because we can't have 2 3s in the same box in a Sudoku. So a raging temperature is not the puzzle for us to solve next, and we'll probably come back to this logic when we go through this puzzle. We can close that one down and head to hungry for sandwiches, which is the next puzzle for us to solve in order. Okay. Now I'm going to quickly put in the digits that we are given from the circled cells, and then we'll go through the rules about how to solve this puzzle, and then we'll go through and solve it. Okay, so we should hopefully have the rules now. Okay, so we've got hungry for sandwiches. Normal Sudoku rules apply, and the clues on the outside of the grid define the sum of the digits between the 1 and the 9, or the 3 and the 8 in a given row or column. Now, for those of you familiar with sandwich Sudoku, you are probably going to see some obvious places to start, in particular this 35 clue that we can see around the grid. So, in normal sandwich Sudoku, you only have a given clues for digits between the sum of the digits between a 1 and a 9 in a given row or column. So, for example, if this was our sandwich, this 35 clue would mean that the sum of these cells here would sum to 35. But in this sandwich Sudoku, or double sandwich Sudoku, we must work out whether these clues are for a 3 and 8 sandwich or a 1 and 9 sandwich. And so some logic that we can use to begin with is to look at what the maximum value a sandwich can take. So for 1 and 9, so I suppose we should start with the sum of all the digits from 1 to 9 in any given row or column is 45. And so if you take away the sandwiched values, the values of the crusts of the sandwich, you can then work out what the maximum remaining sum is to place in between those two digits. So for a sandwich for a 1 and 9 sandwich, the maximum value would be 35, and for a 3 and 8 sandwich, the maximum value would be 34. You should also note that you could never have a 34 clue for a 1-9 sandwich, and that's because you would need, so let's pretend there's a 1 and a 9 here, you'd need all of these cells to add up to 34. You would then have another 1 and a 9, so that would be 44, and then you would need one cell, one digit on the outside of the sandwich to get to your 45 total, and that's not possible because you would then repeat the 1 in that column or row. Okay, so the place for us to start when looking at this grid is these 35 clues and this 34 clue. So we know that the 35 clues are going to have to be for 1-9 sandwiches, and the 1s and 9s are going to have to be at the extremities. So for this 35, that means there and there. For this 35, here and here. And we can see we also have 35s up here, so we'll also need 1-9s on the extremities across here and down here. Okay, and for this 34 clue, so we mentioned that's the maximum for a 3-8 sandwich, so we can put that those 3-8 clues also along this extremity here. Okay, so we've got a good start for some locations for the crusts in the grid, and there should be a couple of other ways for us to work out where the remaining crusts go. Now, a good place to start is to look at the remainder of this middle column. So we know where the 3 and 8 crusts go, and we are given a 9, which is one of our other crusts. And so we know that a 1 has to be placed in this column, and it has to have a sum of 13 between the 1 and the 9. So obviously a 1 can't go here because the sum between the 1 and the 9 would be 0. And similarly, the maximum value that you could place here is now a 7 because of the 8s which are used outside in this sandwich. So this also could not be a 1. In fact, it might be easier for me to colour those in for you, red. So this can't be a 1, this can't be a 1. This cell can't be a 1, and that's just by normal Sudoku. And these two cells can't be 1, also by normal Sudoku. So we're able to place a 1 into the grid, and we know that these 3 cells are going to have to add up to 13. Now, we might also be able to see, we can probably do a bit more colouring around the grid. So along this bottom row we're given, so we've used the 35 clue, and the 0 clue is going to imply that whichever value this is, the other value is going to be in either one of those two cells. So neither of these could ever be a crust. Okay. Now, the next part we might look at is this column here. So we're also given a 1, and it's conveniently or annoyingly, depending on how you want to look at it, placed in the middle. And so we're either going to have a 0 clue or a 23 clue for the 1-9 sandwich. Now, the minimum that, well, the maximum distance that you could place a 9 away from this 1 in this direction, which we've already worked out can't be here or here, would be here. And we can see that that's not going to work because there's going to be no way to fit 23 into one cell. Neither of these are going to be 9 if we're going to if we're trying to build 23 into the 1, 9 sandwich. And so similarly, the reason that this couldn't be a 9 is the same reason this one couldn't be a 9, and because there's no way to get 23 into one cell. And so if if a 9 was here, we would have to have these 3 cells add up to 23. And once again, that's also not going to be possible, because the maximum value that you could have in these 3 cells is going to be 6, 7, and an 8. Well, 6 and 8 can be the other way around, I suppose. But that's going to add up to 21, which is not going to be enough to get to this 23 clue. So that cell's not going to be a 9. In fact, that means that this 23 clue must be referring to the 3, 8 sandwich, and this 0 clue must refer to the 1, 9 sandwich. And so we can put probably 9s in the corners up here to show that a 9 must be in one of those 2 cells. Now that logic is actually going to help quite a lot with this 0 clue, because now we can see what sandwich can have this 0 clue. Well, it can't be the 1, 9 sandwich, because we know a 9 is already in this box and can't be in either of those cells. Otherwise, we won't be able to have a proper 1, 9 sandwich in this column. So the 3, 8 sandwich is going to be the one that has to use this 0 clue. And so we can place an 8 in the corners for those 2 cells there. And in fact, we probably can resolve this. So if we look at this 0 clue in this column, we can see that we've already used the 35 clue for the 1, 9 sandwich, and so the 0 clue is going to be for the 3, 8 sandwich. Now, if this was an 8, then you'd need a 3 in either one of those cells, which is not going to be possible because there's already a 3 in that box. So this cell can't be an 8. So this one is going to be the 8. And in fact, that's actually going to cause more of a restriction on where the 3 and 8 can go in this first column. So an 8 has to be in one of these 2 cells, and a 3 has to be next to it. So a 3 can't go here because, once again, there's a 3 already in this box. So 3 also has to go up in one of those 2 cells. And in fact, we can make those a 3, 8 pair. And while we're at it, now that we've got both crusts in this column, let's colour those in as red. Okay, now just some normal Sudoku here. You can see that we're going to be placing a 1 in one of those 2 cells. But that's not going to help us immediately at the moment. Okay, the next thing we might do is have a look along this row. So we are given an 8 clue and a 22 clue. And once again, we have a 9 in the middle of the row. And similarly to this 1 that we saw down here for this column, we should know that there's going to be no way for us to put a 1 at the extremities to cover, because there's going to be no way for us to make 22 in 3 cells. So we know that the 22 clue is going to be for the 3, 8 sandwich, which is going to start here. And we know that the 8 clue is going to be for the 1, 9 sandwich. Now, where can we place a 1 in this row? Well, we can't place it here because we already have a 1, 9 pair in that column. We could place a 1 here. We can't place a 1 here by normal Sudoku. We can't place a 1 here, and that's going to be because then you'd have to have a 0 clue. So we're only left with these two positions for where a 1 can go. I might just colour those yellow because these ones, so the corner notation usually means where can a 1 go in a box, but in this case we are just talking about the row. Now, so we've only got 2 spots for the 1s, and they're both only 1 digit away from the 9. We need the sandwich clue to be an 8. So one of these cells is going to have to be an 8. And so it's either going to go 1, 8, 9 in this order, or it's going to be 1, 8, 9 from this direction. But either way, we're going to have an 8 in this middle box here so that we can fulfill this 8 clue for the sandwich. And that's going to resolve a couple of our 3, 8 pairs. So that's going to have to be a 3, and that's going to have to be an 8. That's going to have to be a 3, and that's going to have to be an 8. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this 0 clue down here means we can put pencil marked 3s into the corners over there. Okay. Now, this row, in fact, should be even more resolvable now. So because we place this 3 here, the question is, can this cell be an 8? And I think the answer is going to be no. If this is an 8, that would have to be a 1. We then have a 3, 8 sandwich here with a sum of 7, which is well below the 22 total, which we need. So in fact, this is not going to be the 3, that's not going to be the 1, 8 combination. It's going to be this way around. Now we can get rid of our colouring. So we've got a 1 and a 9 here with an 8 in between, resolving that sandwich clue there. And we've got a 3, 8 sandwich here, and we've got 15 already in the sandwich, so we need another 7. And we've only got 2, 4 and 5 left in the row, and so there's going to be no way for us to include a 4 in either of those cells. This is going to have to be 2 and 5, and because that's the only way we're going to be able to make up the total of 22. So this is going to be a 4, and we can place another digit into the grid. Okay. So we might just do a bit more colouring just to make sure we keep track of the cells which are not crusts. In fact, this one is a crust, sorry. Okay, and so where can an 8 go in this row? Well, an 8 here means it can't go in either of those cells, and this 8 means it can't go in either of those cells, so we're left with an 8 up the top here. Okay. And similarly, a 3 must go along here somewhere. Alright, now where to go next? I think the next place to go might be coming back to this middle row here. Now, we've used the 3 and the 8 sandwich for this 0 clue, and we've got this 11 clue remaining for the 1, 9 sandwich. Now we know a 9 can't go in either of those cells. You can colour those red. and so a 9 has to be in one of those two cells. But a 9 can never go here, because there's going to be no way for us to get an 11 into one cell of the Sudoku grid. So let's colour that one red as well, and we can also place a 9 here. Now, some normal Sudoku is going to be able to help us place a 9 down the bottom here. So this 9 rules out these 3 squares, this 9 rules out these 3 squares, and this 1-9 pair is also going to rule out this square down here. So we're left with a 9 in that square. So we can probably do a bit more colouring here now, because we know a 3 is down here. We've got the 8 and the 1 and the 9, so none of these squares can be crusts. Now some more normal Sudoku. We've got 2 8s in these columns here, which is going to force an 8 over there. Okay. And we're making a bit of progress. Now, you can probably now start to look at this row here. So we've got a 9 clue kind of in the 6th column along, and we should start to think whether this is going to be paired with the 1 for a 29 clue or for an 8 clue. Now, these ones here rule out a 1 in any of those cells. This one has ruled out a 1 here, and in fact this 1-9 pair means it's going to be impossible for us to place a 1 here. Actually, just notice this one actually has resolved our 1-9 pair over here, so we can actually fix that around the grid, which is going to make this a lot more obvious. So where can a 1 go in this row? Well, it can't go here or here, and it can't go here or here, so it must go here. And so we need these cells, these two cells, obviously can't add up to 29, so they're going to have to add up to 8. And so we can't use a 1 and a 7 because we've already used a 1. We could use a 2 and a 6. We can't use 3 and 5 because the 3 is already in the bottom row of this box, and we can't have 2 4s. So this is going to be a 2-6 pair. Now the question is going to be, where can a 3 go in this row? Well, we know it can't go here. It can't go in any of these cells. So we're left with either here or here. Now, we know the sum of these digits. This is going to be 10, 12, 18, or 12, 18, doesn't matter. So these are going to be 18, the sum is going to be 18 for these 4 digits. So if we put a 3 here, that's going to be short of our goal of 29. So 3 is going to have to be placed here. And we should be able to now resolve the remainder of the digits in this row. So we're left with a 5 and a 7 as our pair. And we can see, so we know that these add up to 18. We get 22 with this 4, and we're 5 short, we're 7 short, in fact, of the 29 goal. So this is going to be a 7, and that's going to be a 5. Now, we can come back to this, we can do some quick colouring as well. Okay, and so come back to this 0 clue down here, which has to be for the 3-8 sandwich in this column, and it's going to force an 8 in this cell here. Okay, so we can add some more colouring there and get rid of that corner marked 3. Okay, so where can an 8 go in this box? Well, these 8s have ruled out those 6 squares, and this 8 has ruled out this one. So we're left with these 2 squares for possible 8s. Alright, and where can 3s go? Well, I think 3s are going to be in either of those positions, which isn't that helpful. I suppose we should look at this column again. So we've used the 0 clue on the 1, 9 sandwich, and we have a 23 clue for a 3, 8 sandwich. And now we know that 8 in this column is either here or here, and a 3 can be here or here. Now, if this was an 8, you could only have a 3 in one of those 2 cells, both of which are not far enough away from the 8 to fit 23 as a sum. So this cell is not going to be an 8. In fact, this one is going to be an 8. We can get rid of that there. Similarly, this is now no longer going to be able to be a 3, because then you'll be only 7 away from the 8. So this is going to be our 3. Okay, and so we can see here that's going to resolve where an 8 can go in this box, which is there. And so a 3 must be in one of those 2 cells. In fact, we're going to get a 3, 9 pair. But if a 3 is here, the maximum value we could probably put in this cell is a 6. That's going to be still too far below our goal of 23 for the 3, 8 sandwich. So this is going to have to be the 9, and that's going to have to be the 3. And so now we have the location of the crusts, we now just have to make sure our sum in the middle is going to match. So we've got 10, 17, we're going to need 6 to get to 23. Alright, and so once again we've worked out the sums. We've resolved both of those sandwich clues. Now we're left with where does a 9 go down in this box, and the answer is going to be there, and that's in combination of our shading, but also the fact that these 9s here have ruled out the remaining cells in the box. We've also put all our crusts in this box, in fact this entire row. Okay, so we're left with we're needing a 1 in this box. Well, this one here has ruled out this cell, so we're left with, so the 1 is going to have to be placed there. And where can a 3 now be placed in this column? Well, 3 can't be in any of these cells. We've already used those 3 cells, and we know that in this box it must be in this bottom row, so it can't be in any of those 2 cells. So we're going to force a 3 here. We can now colour in a bit more. I'm nearly getting all of our crusts done now. So where can a 3 go in this middle box? It's going to be here. It's actually also a red cell. So we need a 9 in one of these squares. We need a 9 in one of those squares. And we can place the 3 down here. So the 3 can't go in any of those cells. It needs to also rule out those 2. So this is the 3, and that one's going to be red. Okay. So we've actually already resolved this. We probably could have seen this earlier, This one has ruled out a 1 from that cell, so that one must be our 1. And where can a 9 go? Well, it can't go here because that would be next to the 1, and neither of the sandwich clues are 0. So this is going to be the 9. So we can get rid of that, and that one's going to be the 9. There we go. And there we have it, we've finished the crusts. Okay, so now we should just be able to make sure we've used all of our clues and then solve like normal Sudoku. So, the 0 clue and the 35 clue have both been used. Okay, the 3 clue has been used here by the 1-9 sandwich. This 3 in the middle. The 13 clue must be the 3-8 sandwich. We already have a 9 in the middle, so we just need 4 more, which goes there. We've used the 34 clue. We haven't yet used the 13 clue. Let's come back to that. We might be able to just get some more digits elsewhere. In fact, where does a 4 go in this column? Well, 4 can't go here, can't go here, can't go in either of those two cells because of this 4, so we're left with a 4 here. In fact, I might get rid of the shading, might make it a bit easier for us to see everything now. Okay, that's a bit easier. So where does a 4 go in this box? Well, we know this is a 2-6 pair. This 4 has ruled out those 2 squares, so there's a 4 here. Okay, and so we needed to still use this 13 clue for this 1-9 sandwich. We have 4 already there, and so we need 9 in the remainder here. Now, this box is missing a 2, a 5, a 6, and a 7, and we need a way to make 9. Well, the only way to make 9 using those digits is going to be as a 2 and a 7. So that's going to force that to be a 2-7 pair, which is going to resolve our 2-6 pair down here. It's going to be a 6, and that's going to be the 2. This 2-7 pair is also going to force a 7 in this cell, and that's going to be a 5 there. This 2 has resolved our 2-5 pair up the top. Alright, we're left with a 2 and a 6 in these cells. Well, that's resolved by this 6 here. So that's going to be a 6 over there and a 2 there. We're left with a 5 and a 6 in this box. Once again, the 6 has resolved that. I've got a 2 and a 7 remaining. This 2 up here is going to resolve that. So that's going to be the 2 and that's going to be the 7. We're left with a 5 and a 7 for these 2. That's going to have to be a 4. It's the only other digit in that box. You can see here we need 2, 4 and 7 in some order. This one can't be a 4. This column needs a 5 and a 6, which is going to force a 5-6 pair here. So that's going to be 2 and 2 or a 7. Now this box up here needs a 2 and a 5 by the looks of it. Doesn't appear to be resolvable yet. This 7 clue for the 3-8 sandwich is going to mean that's also a 2 or a 5. And in fact this 5-6 pair is going to resolve that. That's going to be the 2 and that's going to be the 5. It's going to resolve that pair there. In fact, we're going to get a lot of extra digits there. So these can't be 2s either. Okay, and we're nearly there. So this needs to be a 6. This has to be a 7. And we're left with a couple of cells to go. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is also a 5-6 pair. This must be a 2 and a 4. Okay. And I think we've used all of our clues now except this 11. And so I think these three cells are what's going to disambiguate all of our pairs here. So can this ever be a 7? Well, the answer is going to be no, because the minimum value that these two cells could sum to is 7. This is a minimum value of a 2, this is a minimum value of a 5, with that, if that was a 7, this would have a minimum value of 14, which is going to be too much for our sandwich clue. So this is going to be a 2. 7, 4, 7, 2, 4. Okay, so that's solved those two. We just have the 5s and 6s to go. So we have 2 and 4 in our sandwich already. That adds to 6. We need a total of 11, so we need 5 more, which is going to give us a 5 here, 6 here, 5, 6, 5, and 6. Just check that. Looks good to me. Perfect. And there we go. There we have the solution to Hungry for Sandwiches. Once again, we're going to take a snipping tool screenshot of our grid so that we can add this to our collection and keep track of all the circles that we have. So let's go across here to our PowerPoint, add a new slide, and get rid of these titles, don't need those. There we go, we have our solution grid for Hungry for Sandwiches. We need to make sure we update our table. So Hungry for Sandwiches was our puzzle title for number 3, and just checking which cells were our asterisk cell. It was this cell here. So coming back to our PowerPoint, we can see that that's a 9. So we'll put a 9 here, and we'll once again come back to those asterisk cells later in the puzzle hunt. But there you have it. There's a solution to Hungry for Sandwiches in part 3 of our Sudoku hunt. I hope you enjoyed that. Please let me know if you found any other ways to get through that puzzle, and subscribe so that you can keep updated for when the next video is released.